Hello! I'm Elaine, and I'm a tour guide in the French Quarter. I do ghost tours. And I am not going to tell you the stories that I tell on my tour, because you gotta pay for those. But if you want to hear some interesting things that have happened to me while I'm leading random drunk people around the French Quarter, I got you.
I've recently switched companies, which means I'm having to learn new tours. And the first step of learning new tours is always shadowing with another guide. As in, the other guide leads the tour and you just follow along with the guests, listening, learning about the intricacies of how the tour runs, the route, and just starting to learn the stories from hearing them said. And I will admit, the tour I shadowed tonight is one I'm already a bit worried about because it's a tour that has 3 bar breaks. And I don't like doing 1 bar break because, guests go into the bars and it takes forever to get them back out. No matter how clear you are on when they should be back out, they take forever. But also, they tend to get more drinks at bars. That's sort of the point. And I don't really like having exceptionally drunk guests on my tour. It really stresses me out. And the tour that I shadowed tonight really makes me second guess whether I can do this tour. So first of all, one of the guests, before we even started, was that guest that's a bit too drunk to be on a tour. He would not stop talking, and, he was talking a little bit too loud, and everything he was saying made just a hair less sense than it probably should have. But he also had 3 friends with him to manage him. So that helps, and also more importantly, this isn't my tour. I'm just following. It's somebody else's responsibility. But he was fine for the first half of the tour, and it was just after the middle bar that we had problems. Because the middle bar, we get there, and there's a security guard checking ID at the door, which is a perfectly normal thing to find at a bar. And this guy doesn't want to show the security guard his ID. And he just keeps being like, oh, but you can see I have gray hair. You can tell I'm old enough. And the security guard is just standing there being like, dude, I'm not judging your age. I have to see everyone's ID. I will lose my job if I do not check your ID, and we could get fined if I do not check your ID. Just show me your ID. And he's going like, well, what if I don't have an ID? And the security guard's like, then you aren't coming into the bar. But finally, the guy's girlfriend just pulls out his ID for him and shows the security guard, and they go inside, and they get drinks they probably don't need. And when they come back out, once again, this guy beelines to harass the security guard. And he's noticed the security guard has a badge on, and the first thing he says, without any preamble, is just, "Are you 5-0?" And the security guard sort of looks at him funny, which I think what was going on is the area code of New Orleans is 504, and, even though it's not a very common one, I have heard people use the slang as saying, I am 504, as a way of saying, I am from this area. So I think that was the confusion, but the guard just sort of stared at him until the guy was like, are you a cop? And then the security guard was like, oh, no, I'm just a security guard. And he's like, but are you an off-duty cop? And he's like, no, I'm a security guard. And he's like, yeah, but you're wearing a badge. And the security guard's like, yeah, it's just to mark that I'm an authority figure. And he's like, but you're not a cop. You can't wear a badge if you're not a cop. Isn't that against the law? And he will not drop it. And he keeps going on and on about how he's never seen anyone who's not a cop wear a badge. And mind you, this badge also looks fake as hell. I'm pretty sure they got it at the dollar store. And this guy is just being like, this is perfectly normal, sir. And he's being like, no, man, if you came to my hometown, if you came to Philly and you wore a badge and you're not a cop, you'd get your ass beat. And finally, the guy's girlfriend intercedes and just sort of drags him away. And for the rest of the tour, he was that annoying drunk guy who would not shut up. Everywhere we went, he was talking constantly, talking over the tour guide, making incoherent jokes, and just generally being obnoxious. But he's not even the reason that I'm questioning doing this tour. That started really early on. The second stop on this tour comes directly after a bar break, and let's just say it's a bit of an awkward tonal shift, because the second stop on this tour is talking about the slave trade. It's very dark, and specifically, it's done at the slave pens, where they housed people in horrific, torturous conditions before they sold them. And this tour guide is trying to tell the story, and I'm standing towards the back of the group because I didn't pay to be on this tour. I don't want to take up a spot in the front line where someone who actually paid for this would be. So I always stand towards the back. Also, I don't want to draw attention to myself because, I don't want to distract from the tour guide. But one of the guests just sort of ignores him and just comes over and like leans over to chat with me. And this has happened a couple of times when I've been shadowing other tours, and usually it's to ask a question. And so that's what I sort of expect. But she leans in close and says, "You know, I think we should bring all those immigrants on the southern border here and throw them in the cells so that they can learn they don't actually want to come to America. I think after a couple weeks here, they'd learn to go home." And I just stared at her, blankly. Like, I wanted to just be like, "Woman, what the hell is wrong with you?" But I, A, can't do that because I don't want to lose my job that I just got with this company. But also, this isn't my tour. I don't want to interrupt it for the guide and cause any chaos that could, cut into his tips and ruin his star rating. So I just sort of stare at her long enough that eventually she turns and goes back to her friends. And she's pointing over at me and laughing. So I could tell that they realized that I did not agree with them. Which, yeah, no. I'm worried about this tour.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, and feel free to share your own experiences in the comments below.